The Director of Implementation and Compliance at GrandCare. We're starting with end uses. We're going to start with the end because I do want to talk to you about the technology eventually and all the nitty gritty of it, but I thought it would be most helpful to think about where are we headed? What can we do with this technology eventually? And that's what y'all are doing here at Trillium. You're providing care, and ultimately it's going to be about that, what happens between you and the member and the outcomes that you guys get. And so to put it in a more personal way, the question that we're trying to answer today is what impact could we make here with this technology? Why are we doing this? Who are the people that are going to benefit from this? And one way that we can do that is to look at how this technology has already made an impact elsewhere. And not because we want to pigeonhole your organization into only using the technology in this way, but because we want to at least provide some kind of inspiration, some kind of launching point from which you can take the technology and go where you want it to go. And so in this particular story that I'm going to share, this provider agency from Ohio approached us because they wanted to dramatically change the way that they provided service to individuals with intellectual disabilities. And they were experiencing the same kinds of challenges that providers throughout the nation were experiencing with staff shortages and costs and individuals wanting more independence. And so what they did was to try to study what has already been done. They visited a bunch of smart homes around the country, and they decided that, okay, these are good, but there's something that is still left to be had. And they wanted to do things slightly differently from how things had already been done. And so they went in search of how to do this, starting with the question, not so much what technology do we want, but what are the needs that we're trying to solve for? And then after they determined what those needs were, then they would ask what technology can fit with those needs to solve them. And when they're trying to come up with needs, they came up with 164 needs that they thought needed to be solved in order to provide a safe and secure service delivery for their individuals, in this case, adults, in this smart home pilot project that they're developing. And they vetted 23 platforms to try to find this central platform, this remote support platform around which their other pieces of technology could revolve around. And they decided on GrandCare. By the way, with those needs that they identified, that long list, they said that 99% of them could be addressed with technology. And not to say that only GrandCare would address it. They looked at other pieces of technology as well, like wearables or smart fridges. But the GrandCare would be the centerpiece, the thing that is in the middle, the central hub. Then they started this smart home and had a couple of guys move in the fall of 2020. And this is what happened.
For Daniel Jones, his own room outside of his parents' house is a big step.
This is my room. And yes, I clean it for you.
The 24-year-old says he's always wanted to live independently, was never sure he could, until now.
This GrandCare system shows you how to be very independent and will help you on knowing what your schedule is.
That's thanks to LAD, a community nonprofit that is piloting the smart house Jones is living in. There's over 100 pieces of technology in the home where 4 men with disabilities live together. without the help of live-in care.
Really, nobody else is doing this. We scoured the country and found nothing that was going as far as we wanted to.
The technology ranges from easier ways to reach dishes.
You can grab it like that if you're trying to reach for something, but it's a lot easier.
To daily reminders.
I already brushed my teeth. You can check that off.
To easy access to help.
Hey, Alexandra. Just wanted to check in.
The house even includes a sensory room,
When I get stressed out, and then I'll come in here.
which helps the residents stay calm. The idea came after Ladd realized the staffing shortages for assistance, as well as not enough funding for it. So instead of having someone hired to wait for something to happen, the house can help sense something before anything does.
If somebody gets up at night, the motion sensor in their room lets us know they're moving. When their feet hit the ground, the floor sensors know someone's up and walking around. Different door and motion sensors let us know where they're in the house. And what this allows us to do is be able to provide assistance almost before they need it.
For Jones, he's always wanted to live outside of his parents' home, and this smart house has allowed him to do that.
I get choked up by talking about my family, but family's very important to me because one, they helped me to strive me to be independent.
And just in the 6 months since moving in, Jones and his roommates have proven they can do it.
We've been able to be really successful in the guys being more independent. They're more active in their community. They are needing less interruptions and prompts in their day to just live their own lives.
I have people to prove that I can do what I have not done before, and I can do it because of support.
So, guys like Daniel and many more like him are benefiting from this kind of technology. The first beneficiary of this technology-enabled service delivery model is the individual. Individual at the residence who will be able to live independently, perhaps for the first time in his entire life. And this type of quality of life has been studied in this particular case with this organization. What they did is that they collaborated with a nearby university, in their case, Xavier University, to do a 3-year study. And the Department of Occupational Therapy, a couple of folks there were involved in this study, and they chose this particular measure, the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure. This would be for the residents' self-identified tasks. And what they discovered was that after 3 years, there were clinically significant increases in the performance scores and the satisfaction scores for all the residents with these self-identified tasks. And so the impact that we're making for this individual can be quantified as well. The executive that's mentioned there, he was the chief strategy officer, Brian, who's now the chief operating officer for that organization, mentioned about one of the individuals that person doesn't need us anymore. He can do things by himself. And the other thing that he mentioned was that it's rewarding for these individuals to be able to interact, for example, in this way that you see here on this slide. They've been paying staff for decades to provide these reminders, for example, like the one there, brush your teeth, shave, shower, and they've used sticker charts. But now with the screen and its ability to sequence and do things like the to-do reminders, now they have this ability to give him the independence, and the individuals there know that if they don't check it off, they have someone on the other end who can reach out and say, hey, you didn't take your shower yet, did you forget? And so they have that level of independence, but at the same time, if someone needs to check in, they can do that as well on the other side. But the impact goes beyond just the individual, because the parents and the guardians who have been caring for the individual all these years have had this lingering question in their mind, a big question. What's going to happen to my son or daughter or child when I'm gone, when I'm not able to provide care for them anymore? And so now providing this technology-enabled service delivery model gives this person an independent lifestyle, an independent living situation, allowing him to have a better quality of life without them. And so now this child is able to not be institutionalized, but have this very nice living situation. And what about the organization? Is this just purely just a benefit for the individual and his family? And the answer is no. And so this is an amazing thing. With this tech-enabled service delivery model, it turns out that it's financially sustainable. The favorable win-win situation all of a sudden is created between the organization and those that the organization is trying to serve. So the other thing in this Xavier study that was studied, other than the performance and satisfaction scores of the individual, were also the cost savings with this technology and the number of hours that were saved. So in their particular case, the direct caregiving hours were decreased by a whopping 75%. It is just incredible. And that reduction in hours is, of course, going to translate into a reduction in cost of caregiving. So they reduced about 100 hours a week of in-person staffing. And when it came down to dollars, originally, before this model, it would cost them about $5,200 a week at move-in for direct caregiving. But then with the shift, with the change to the technology-enabled service delivery model, meaning a combination of in-person supports and remote supports, they were able to cut that into half to $2,600 a week. And so that was saving them about over $100,000 a year just in this particular home, this particular case. And so, in other words, from the organization standpoint, there was a return on investment, in this case, in months. And that return on investment was not just for the technology of the GrandCare, but also for the other technology they were using in this particular case, which was the smart fridge and wearables. And so in reality, the return on investment just for the GrandCare technology was just weeks. And as they became leaner and more effective in their staffing models, they were able to reduce that even more, the return on investment time. And part of what they did in this particular case is they had cluster models for their homes. And so what that meant was that they would have 3 homes that were within 5 minutes of each other and not on the same block, though, kind of spread out. And wherever they had approximately 16 to 18 staff members before, with the new service delivery model technology, they are now able to have 5 in-person staff plus this remote support staff layer on the back, which was able to serve with ratios of 1 to 25 people or 1 to 30 people. So these are some of the numbers that they reported in their case. And the cost savings, according to the executive, whenever an organization switches to this kind of model, is about 20% at least. And so with that, one is able to go to regulators or people with funding sources and say, okay, you're going to help us with funding sources. And even if we aren't able to get it right now, we're still seeing a cost saving. So it still would make sense. And if the organization is saving money in one area and able to reduce staff caregiving hours in one area, that means they're able to redeploy that staff and that money to other individuals who perhaps would be on the waiting list otherwise. And so that's what's happened in the case of this organization. That 75% of reduction in in-person support hours, all of a sudden, those staff can now support other people who are there. And so they're able to provide more supports because they're providing supports in a different way. So an example of that is in areas where they did need 24/7 support, the individuals, instead of hiring a second staff member in those cases, they were able to provide that second layer by remote support. In addition to the first layer would be in person. And so there's some creative ways that the technology can be deployed for a leaner staff efficiency. And last but not least, perhaps my most favorite amazing impact on this is the answer to the question, is the direct support staff somehow benefited by this technology, or are they on the short end of the stick? And the answer is that there is something good in them from this technology-enabled service delivery shift. So the executive for this organization explained that when it came to staff, they discovered that it's not about replacing staff, but rather about allowing staff to have more meaningful relationships where they are deployed, providing support where where it is needed necessarily. And to hammer the point, to prove the point, he explained how in this organization, the turnover of staff has gone down dramatically. In their case, from 28 open DSP positions down to 5 open DSP positions. And so people are staying longer, he's noticing, because they are experiencing this meaning in their work and what they're doing. And so basically, what this means is that there is an impressive win-win-win situation between the individual and the family, and then the organization and the staff who are helping to provide the care. And it's for these reasons, for these advantages, that states have started to take notice and start making a move towards providing support or care or service with a technology-first mindset. And technology first is a name that has been given. Perhaps you're already familiar with this. If not, I'll just provide a brief explanation here. It began as a movement, this technology first, but more or less now it's become a framework for systems change, where when a family, an individual and his family are considering supports, then the first thing that is considered in that discussion is technology for the benefits that were previously described and more. And of course, using person-centered approaches all the time in that process. Because, this technology first type of mindset is solving the pressing challenges that are in our industry these days: staff shortage, organizational costs, individuals' quality of life. And this map that you're looking at here, it just shows the outcome of an analysis that was done states throughout the United States a few years ago, which states have started to come up with initiatives or legislation that have to do with technology first mindset or shift. And so you can see there's about over 20 states there. And even in where you see the green triangles and there is already something to be done, there's still a lot more that could be done in each of those states. But this change, this technology shift, what is it exactly? What is it in detail? Now we can take a closer look at how the day-to-day life actually could change for the individual, the member residing in the house, and then the staff member, the support staff member. What is the change when you switch from the old model, which service delivery, to the new technology-enabled service delivery model? To sum it up, it's to provide support only when and where it's needed. New way is providing support only when and where it's needed. So in other words, as you go from the old to the new way, you're trying to get away from the one extreme, which is to provide support when it's not needed, which has an impact on the individual's independence and also on the cost of the organization and the meaning of the staff member. You're trying to get away from that one extreme, too much support, and then going to this new way without going to the other extreme, which would be to not provide enough support, which would then not be safe and secure for the individual. And so let's take a look at a couple of examples and how this plays out in day-to-day life. Prompts or reminders. So in the old way or the previous way, the parent, the guardian, the mom perhaps would remind her child to do things throughout the day, to brush his teeth, to take a shower, to shave, to take his medications also. And very often the result would be a strained relationship between the two, and both parties finding it some kind of unpleasantness in all of this. With the shift to the new technology-enabled service delivery model, what you see is that the touchscreen, the technology itself is providing those prompts all of a sudden. The technology, the touchscreen platform in this case, is reminding him to shower, to shave, to take medications, to get dressed. And then the individual is empowered then to just check it off, to tell the support team that he has done it. And for instance, if the medication is not taken, the support team can be notified. A rule can be set so that the support team is notified that such and such person has not taken the medication. and they could receive an email, a text, or a phone call about that, and then they can intervene in those situations. For instance, our CEO mentioned that her son is on the spectrum, and that previously she would nag him about doing all sorts of things throughout the day. And after switching to having the touchscreen provide these reminders instead, the relationship was improved. And this is a common thing that we see throughout our customers. In certain cases, the person who previously was hesitant or reluctant or resistant to doing things when told by somebody close to them, all of a sudden, they're doing it when the touchscreen is telling them to do it. There's just a difference there. And so I'm going to play a video here that will demonstrate an example of what that looks like. So those were reminders, prompts. Another area in this individual's life that will be impacted with the introduction of technology is how he manages his health. And so wellness, in this case, or vitals, any kind of condition that the individual is trying to manage. In this particular case, let's take example of blood pressure, where the individual would take his blood pressure and the professional, the direct support person, would record the blood pressure reading on a clipboard or a paper chart and a notebook of some sort. With the shift to technology, to the technology-enabled service delivery model, all of a sudden the technology is going to remind the individual to take his blood pressure. And when he does take it, that reading is automatically and wirelessly transmitted to the touchscreen, which is a touchscreen computer, to be specific, where it is recorded and can be accessed by the remote support staff, wherever they are. So they can take a look at that if they have the appropriate roles. The individual himself can also take a look at the readings on the touchscreen if that particular button is enabled, if he ever wants to look at that. But then more importantly, the staff can also set rules for themselves such that, for instance, if the blood pressure is above a certain number or outside of a certain range, they can get a notification. They can get a call, a text, an email alert on the dashboard or some sort, whatever it is. It's customizable, and they can know when something is off. Or if they just want to take a look at a bunch of readings across a certain time period, they can pull a report of all the readings. And that goes for blood pressure or all sorts of other vitals and measurements that are taken using technology that is integrated with the GrandCare in this case. This video. There's no particular sound in this one, so you just see what that looks like there as an example. Those are the readings that you could pull up from the website, the portal, which we'll take a look at later. That's an example of a rule that you can set. And those are some examples of some of the devices. Let's take a look at a third area that can be impacted: activity. A person's activity throughout the day, in this case, motion or doors and things like that. If there's unusual activity in the old service delivery model, in this particular case, this individual that we're going to use as an example is sharing a house with other people, and he has a sleep-related eating disorder such that at certain times he may wake up in the middle of the night, go down to the kitchen, open up the fridge, and start eating things that are there, perhaps even some things that he shouldn't eat or eating too much. For that, an in-person overnight staff member would be situated there, so to provide that intervention just in case this were to happen, and then help this person to get back to bed, get back to sleep. With the technology-enabled service delivery model, it's different. You could provide the same care such that if that same person were to get out of bed, first of all, it would be noticed because of a motion sensor that was in that room. If that person were to walk down the hallway, another motion sensor could be placed there as well. And then if that person were to enter the kitchen, yet another motion sensor could detect that motion there as well. And those activities of motion could be set on a rule such that, for instance, if there's motion between midnight and 6 a.m., please give me an alert. And so then the staff member who's remote would receive that alert, that notification, either on a dashboard, a call, email, text. And then by the time that person is there, or perhaps even before that person is there, that remote support person could show up, make a video call to the touchscreen that's in the kitchen, and then tell that person, hey, shouldn't you be going back to bed instead? And so providing that same intervention without having the person there physically in person. And in that way, that same remote staff person could theoretically manage multiple residences at once. Here's just a quick example of that. There's also no sound for this. He's gone there to the kitchen, and there's the intervention by the remote staff member. Okay, so those were some examples of day-to-day changes, and there's plenty more that can happen, as you can imagine. But now we can take a look at some challenges that could be posed or questions that could be asked about this new technology-enabled service delivery model. And this organization, the Ohio organization's case, they did have a particular staff member. The executive said her name was Phyllis, who would challenge the new way. And he said it was very valuable to have Phyllis, to have somebody who would be challenging the new way, because only then could this delivery model be improved and find ways to get better. And one elephant in the room, you could say, is, yeah, okay, it's great you're providing these prompts, your remote and all of that, but really, is it really safe? Is it really secure? And the experience of this organization having adopted the technology service delivery model is not only has it the potential to be as safe as the old service delivery model, amazingly, it has the potential to be even more safe than the old service delivery model. And one thing that you can see from this diagram is if you had a staff member, let's say in one of these rooms, and that staff member were trying to care for multiple people in the house, then that staff member would be limited to what that staff member could see or hear in that room or in the local vicinity. If there was some part of the house that was distant and someone needed care from there, then it would not as easy to detect that. But with the technology-enabled service delivery model, all of a sudden the assists and supports are all around the house. As many places in the house that you want them to be. You can see some of the motion sensors that are there, or the door sensors that are installed near the doors. They could be in all the places that you want them to be in the house. And all of a sudden the assists are happening residence-wide. The other way that he put it, as an executive who's trying to help other states to adopt this type of service delivery model, is when in his discussions with state regulators, he would often get this question, is it safe? And they would be reluctant or suspicious of the technology-enabled service delivery model. And his response, what he would like to do, and I'm not sure if he's actually done it just yet, what he would like to do is to invite them to come to a house like this where care is being provided to somebody and to show them, for example, two caregivers or two in-person support staff who are helping a person, let's say in the toilet with a bariatric toilet lift. And to tell that regulator, okay, these two in-person support staff members are helping here right now. What happens if something happens over there in that room over there far away? And to have that regulator ponder that. Now, if technology were available in that same situation, technology would be able to help that other person. It would be detected, first of all, by the sensors, and then an intervention could be made by a remote staff's person using the touchscreen in that area. And so the sensors allow for technology or for activity to be tracked throughout the home, and the notifications that the support staff receive can be created or complex or as simple enough as you need for it to catch the things that you want to catch. And then if auto answering, for instance, is set up, you can have eyes and ears into that room whenever you want, or the individual themselves can reach you with a touch of a button for a video call. And then if actually needed on site, because of the way that the remote support staff are situated within a certain distance of the place, they could still provide, if actually needed, that in-person direct intervention and come into the house in a short amount of time. So yes, you're providing support only when and where it is needed. In this particular case, you're being more precise and surgical about it. We're looking at this example that we have been diving deeply into of this Ohio provider, and they've been successful in achieving their outcomes with their smart living system. And it wasn't easy for them necessarily. They had to learn a lot of things because it wasn't just about throwing technology into these residents' homes. Of course, they had to get an assessment of their needs, in particular, what each person needed. And then they had to get everyone's buy-in, the state's buy-in, the family's buy-in, the individual's buy-in, and then the buy-in of the staff as well. Because what they were doing is really they're changing the mindset. They're changing the culture and they're changing the processes. And that's what enabled them to achieve their success. And that particular organization, the CEO or the COO, the executive, he's even started to help other organizations try to adopt a similar model. He's been traveling around. No two organizations are going to apply this same technology in exactly the same way. There's going to be different populations, different needs of different individuals, different processes within the organization itself, and it's going to result in slightly different outcomes, perhaps. But there are clearly similarities, similar uses. Technology is going to be most effective within organizations that embrace an organization-wide mindset, culture change, and approach. I wanted to show you another example of a different setting where this technology has been used. And so for this particular case, we're going to go across the pond to a different country, the UK in this case. And more specifically, what's different about this is that the technology is not being used to provide care in a group setting or a group smart home, but it's for an individual who actually is moving away from a group living situation to living alone. So this technology can be used for individuals living alone.
My name is Sophie Alexandra Fay, and I was diagnosed with autism by the age of 2 years old. Before I came to the Hollies, I used to live in the other supported service. I have to share with 4 other girls. The only space you can have is your own bedrooms. So when I found out about the Hollies by my social worker, they thinking I deserve my own space. I need some of my own time. And I'm thinking, yes, this is a really good time for me. I got my own living room, got my own bedroom and my bathroom, and I got everything I need. So it's really perfect. I chose the couch. I love the couch. And at the side of the fitted wardrobes, I put all these figures, Disney figures here. put a lot of stuff in the shelves down there. I put everything where I put in place I could think of is really good. Staff will talk to you if you're feeling not yourself, or they can help, and then they can help you with emotional support if anything on your mind. It also helped me with support with going out in places. It's with the help of my family and anyone around me. I'd be so much happy. If it wasn't for my social worker being Holly's been built, I wouldn't be struggling living the other supported service I live in. So I would be struggling. It'd be gone downhill for me. So I'm grateful for being here.
It's not just for individuals like Sophie, also for individuals who are within the guardian, perhaps. And we've also seen this used in settings like respite situations, which are not for the entire week, maybe just the weekend. And it's not just for individuals who have intellectual disabilities either. And so there's individuals in the mental health space who have been helped by this, and foreseeably other individuals or members who have perhaps similar needs could be assisted. And so this is where your creativity can result in potentially new uses of this technology that perhaps have not been seen anywhere else. Let's talk about the technology a little bit here in an overview, sort of in 30,000 feet level. So we talked about the different ways that the technology can provide care to an individual, to a member. And now, what is the technology, really? The first thing is the touchscreen itself. The touchscreen platform, the touchscreen PC, it is a computer more than just a touchscreen. It's got a hard drive, it's got speakers and microphone, and we're going to get into that in more detail in the next Power Hour. We'll do an orientation on that. But what I wanted to say here is that this touchscreen platform technology is what the member is primarily used by the individual, the resident living in the home. It's at the point of care. So that resides where the person lives, the apartment, for example. And there could be multiple of these in a single residence, one in the private area of the bedroom, and then another one perhaps in the common area, like a kitchen. And so those could provide different functions in the different places of the house for that person. And then the thing that I'm showing on the right is the website or the portal. And that's also developed by GrandCare, that software. It's where the support member, the support team, that would be deployment support, that would be remote support, that could even be the family support, the family members who want to make video calls. Of course, each of those roles would have different permissions within that same website, but that's where they would perform those types of things, the customizations, looking at reports, making rules, and all sorts of things that would, yes, impact the touchscreen. Let's say if they're customizing a touchscreen, they would make the changes in the portal and it would be reflected on the touchscreen itself. Or if they wanted to look up data and reports, they would have to connect to the internet and then make sure that the touchscreen is connected to the internet as well so that they could access the data, because the data actually lives in the touchscreen at the point of care. And so both of these two elements of the technology are the ones that we're going to develop the most in these Power Hours. I'd like to share what I know with you all that I think would be useful for you to be successful. And the other thing that I'll mention here is that this portal, this website, as you've probably seen by doing the Canvas training, is something that you can access on any internet-connected device. So that would be your desktop, laptop, smartphone, as long as you have your email and your password for accessing that, and that it doesn't have to, and it usually is not on the touchscreen that you access this website, but on your own device or office device. And then now we'll take a look at this technology that you're seeing on the slides right now. So I mentioned the GrandCare technology that we develop, and the motion sensors, smart switches, door sensors, which I didn't show a picture of, as well as the oximeter, scale, glucometer, etc., those health devices are not developed by GrandCare, but by third-party organizations. Like Fora develops the oximeter that we currently use. And so they've got their own instructions for use. What GrandCare does is it develops its software so that it can talk to or receive data from these devices wirelessly. So in the case of activity devices like motion sensors, that communicates along one wireless communication protocol called Z-Wave. And then when it comes to the wellness health devices, that communicates with the GrandCare using another wireless communication protocol called Bluetooth. And so that's why we need a Bluetooth antenna and a Z, which comes with every touchscreen, and then a Z-Wave antenna, which is attached to the back of the touchscreen if you decide to use these activity devices. And we will try to know what we need to know about these devices without necessarily getting into too much depth, only what we need to know about them. And so, yeah, as I mentioned before, my understanding is that you've gone through the Canvas training, and that's great because that will give you an initial exposure before doing these power hours to the technology itself that GrandCare makes. And these power hours are meant to complement that, to build upon what you've already seen in the Canvas training. One of the things that we will try to do is to try to give you some hands-on experience with using the portal and with the touchscreen as it's affected by the portal in such a way that it mimics real-life scenarios that I think you'll encounter or potentially will encounter in your day-to-day job, to just pass on and to embolden, give you more confidence that, yeah, you can actually do this. It's not that bad. And then for the things that you've already been exposed to in the Canvas training, I hope that I will cement or confirm or emphasize some key points from what you've already learned, and then further develop or dive more deeply into some of those things that you already know. For instance, I'd like to discuss even more in more depth the difference between accounts and users, or the difference between distributors and groups, and just to make sure that those distinctions are clarified and strong. And finally, I'm hoping that in these power hours, I'll be able to give you some updates, because that Canvas training was developed at a certain time, at a fixed time. In GrandCare, the technology is a living product, and software changes, hardware changes sometimes. I'd like to be able to give you the updates on those things in case there is something that might be slightly different from what you've seen in the Canvas training. So yeah, let's take a look at the touchscreen in the next power hour. We'll let you know what more or less would be required from your touchscreen to prepare it for that next power hour. Just take a look at the hardware itself, and then also navigate through the different things that the member would potentially see on the touchscreen. So yeah, I put the slide on here. This is the last slide. That phone number there is for the support line. So if you call that, you get a support person. You may sometimes get me, but you may also get other folks on a GrandCare team. And that email address on the right is also general support at GrandCare. And we encourage you to use this as often as you like, because I know from personal experience, it can take several exposures to this material or to this technology to get it down pat. And of course, things change too. So sometimes people just want to confirm that what they have learned in the past still holds today. And so if you're ever shy or thinking hesitant, please don't be. Just reach out to us. We're happy to hear from you.